What is up, all you Minties? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, and join me today for an episode that a lot of you have been wanting me to do for a long time, and that is my top 10 best standalone, all-in-one graphic novels. So, please stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before I start these type of lists, I always like to remind everyone that this is just my humble opinion. These are my top 10 standalone, all-in-one. You don't need to read anything else. You don't need to have prior knowledge. You can be read either really quick or in a couple of hours. And I think the ones that I chose is like any list that I do, it's always difficult, and that's why I'll have honorable mentions, what to put on the list, what to take away. But I had a lot of fun putting it together. If you want to leave comments down below to let me know what your top 10 are, what your suggested standalone graphic novels are, please, by all means, leave those comments down below. And this is an idea that I had from a lot of you all because you wanted to either show somebody that doesn't read comics what is available in this comic format and graphic novel format, or you yourself needed something that you're just, I don't want to be bogged down with history. I don't want to read anything afterwards. I just want to read a standalone book. So let's go ahead and get started. Daytripper by Gabriel and Fabio Moon. You've seen this book on my list many times. I don't know how many lists I have on the channel, but if you look back, I'm sure this book is on there a lot. Probably, more than likely, a lot of these are going to be on some sort of list that I've made throughout the years. But this book is phenomenal. And if you haven't read this and have avoided other people mentioning it, I strongly suggest that you don't look at reviews. You just jump in cold. There's a trade paperback available, there's a hardcover available, and then there is this absolute available, which is the way that it's beautiful. So Daytripper is wonderful because we follow the story of Brás de Oliveira Domingues in his life in Brazil. And then each issue, there's a total of 10, ends with his death at a different point in his life. And then he has to make different choices throughout each issue, and he dies at different ages, sometimes when he's young, sometimes when he's an old man, sometimes when he's middle age, whether it's an accident or self-inflicted. But throughout all of these issues, you find out who this man is and what his life is made of. And I think that is probably one of the best examples for a graphic novel that has sci-fi elements but can also tell this amazing, heartwarming story. And of course, the artwork is particularly gorgeous and pushes those preciousness of these wonderful moments that are encapsulated in the story. So this is one, like I mentioned, I always mention in a lot of my lists. We've done an old reader, new reader on it. And yeah, if you're gonna force somebody to read something from this list, this is definitely one of them. All of these are. Blankets by Craig Thompson. Regarded as one of the best original standalone graphic novels of all time. It is beautiful. It is the story of, well, I guess you could say it's the story of Craig, right? It's the story of Craig Thompson coming of age. And it won't be the only coming of age that you will see on this list, but it starts with him and his brother sleeping together in the same room when they're little, and the trauma that they went through and the adventures they went through together. And it just hit me right in the feels immediately because it just made me reminisce of the times that I was little with my brother, and it just spoke to me. And then we see him grow up. We see him reach this awkward adolescent stage, and there's a lot of Christianity in his background. And then he gets mixed up and falls in love with this girl named Reina at one of these Christian church camps. And they reveal to each other their own struggles, and with not just faith, but their dreams of just escaping this little midtown USA. Because that's the backdrop to all of this, is this winter. So it's all this white lack of color, but it's just beautifully drawn snow. And you could say that that's the blanket of the story, or the physical blanket that Reina makes for him. And there's just these vibrant brushstrokes that each of these pages are so unique. He did such an amazing job in not just the artwork, but this beautifully written story about falling in love, long distance relationships, heartbreaks, and just the drama that comes with that first love. Oh, it's perfect, and absolutely suggest this. We've done an old reader, new reader on it if you want to go back and watch that, but maybe it's time to revisit this book. I love this book. Y'all knew I had to have some superhero books in here. Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross. This wonderful story that is beautifully painted by Alex Ross is the dawn of the Marvel Age, told through the eyes of a journalist named Phil Sheldon. And it is everything that I think this list should have. It's definitely a standalone story. It's not in continuity, but it doesn't matter, because through the years you get to see all these things that happen in the Marvel Universe. The coming of Galactus, the death of Gwen Stacy, the rise of the mutants. Like I mentioned, just the dawn of the Marvel Universe told through an everyday Joe. And I think that's where this story really shines. Because as I mentioned many times on this channel, the Marvel Universe is a place that could exist in your backyard. These streets are real. These cities are real. All they're adding are just these supernatural or superheroes into the story. And I think it's a wonderful take on superheroes. It's less about the superhero stories and more about the man, Phil Sheldon, his family, and him just getting older. And just being witness to all these things, these marvelous things that are happening around him. So yes, it helps to know the history of the Marvel Universe, but you're not bogged down by years of having to know minute details. You can just enjoy it for what it is. And yes, I mean, of course, I would like for you all to read the Dark Phoenix Saga or The Coming of Galactus, but you know, if this is all you read, then I think you're gonna get a good understanding of what Marvel Comics can be. This One Summer by Mariko Tamaki and Jillian Tamaki. And this is a big shout out to my wife, Melanie, who always finds some kind of graphic novel that I don't have in my collection. Every Christmas or every birthday, she goes out of her way to do some research. And she found this one a few years ago. And we were going on a trip and I read it, and it starts off with the cart trips. The story of Rose and how every summer she goes with her mom and her dad to a lake house in Awago Beach. And we were taking a road trip, so I started to read it while she drove. And it's their getaway from and their refuge from reality to them. And this particular summer, her mom and dad are going through a lot of trouble, a lot of marital issues, and she's witnessing all this. I mean, she's a little girl, and she herself is going through changes. So this is another coming of age story. And you know, I don't have anything in common with a little girl other than the fact that I have little girls, but we've all been that age. We've all been that awkward age where we want to escape, where we want to run away from our everyday life. And when we get there, when we actually get out of our everyday life, do we want to stay or do we come back? Do we start missing the things that we know? So I think this is a beautiful story. It's perfect. There's a lot more to it, but the least amount you know about it, the better off you will be enjoying these. So actually, the least amount I tell you about all these books, you're better off enjoying it that way. So one of the things I forgot to mention is that Rose is not the only one going through changes. Her friend Wendy is there every summer. And because they're reaching this age where they're going through changes, both of them may not be as close as they once were, and then you throw in teenagers. There's a couple of little things that happen that could get them in trouble, but absolutely 100%. This is a quick read. Do yourself a favor and check it out. It's available in hardcover and in softcover. This is definitely one that you won't regret, and this is probably geared towards teens, but I don't care how old you are. You will enjoy this. Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. I don't care if I get called a sellout. I don't care if everyone else on the internet has this on their list. Doesn't matter. It deserves it. This is considered one of the greatest graphic novels of all time, or the greatest graphic novel of all time according to some, and it rightly belongs on people's list, at least in my opinion. And I realize that there have been other standalone graphic novels written since this, but to me, this is the granddaddy of superhero graphic novels done right, all in one. I don't care if there's a Before Watchmen, you don't have to read that. If there's a Doomsday Clock, don't read that. This is the one that needs to be read. You don't even have to watch the HBO show, but I highly recommend it. But this is it. This is all in one. Get to know these characters. Night Owl, Dr. Manhattan, Silk Spectre, Rorschach, Raw Shark. Ozymandias, just to name a few, because you will never look at superhero books the same way. It is so much more. It is a heavy read. I will warn you that. It's not a fast read like this one, Summer. This one has, of course, a little... Actually, this one is mature content, so keep that in mind. There's actual novel pieces in between chapters, and this is the Citizen Kane of graphic novels, and it rightly belongs on the list. This is one of my most read graphic novels that I have on this in my collection, this Absolute, but it's available in trade paperback and in deluxe edition, hardcovers. It has a new printing every year, it seems like. But if you haven't read it, then make this the year to do it. I mean, it's 2020, right? What else we got to do? Now's a good time to remind you all to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We put out videos every day. Check out our Redbubble and our Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. Let's get back to that list. Pride of Baghdad by Brian K. Vaughan and Niko Henrichon. And this one, if you love animals, stay away from this book. It is mature content, but in this real life slash fictional story, because these animals can talk, in the spring of 2003, pride of lions escaped from the Baghdad Zoo during this American bombing raid. So all four are lost, reliving their past. There's a little cub. It's adorable. The artwork is so breathtaking, but it is brutal because it's the tragedy of war and the victims that we don't think about, like the zoos. I mean, it reminds me of a story that I read as a kid, or an anime about the zookeeper. Well, never mind. I don't want to get into that because that's too heartbreaking to talk about. Let's talk about this. To me, this is such a beautiful standalone story. It deserves to be on everybody's shelf. There's a trade paperback, a deluxe edition, a standard size hardcover, and it raises the questions about the meaning of true liberation. Can it really be given, or is it earned through self-determination and sacrifice? And the struggles that this pride goes through to try to get back to their home, it's amazing. So in the end, you really ask yourself, is it better to live in captivity or die in freedom? And it's wonderful. So please, yeah. But like I mentioned, if you love animals, stay away. 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank by Matthew Rosenberg and Tyler Boss. This is by Black Mask Studios. It's available in trade paperback and in hardcover. It was a limited edition hardcover that came out for just comic book stores. Matthew Rosenberg had a run on Punisher. He had a run on X-Men, but this is it. I read this last year, or maybe 2 years ago, and I fell in love with the story. So it is the story of Paige. As a matter of fact, it opens up with Paige and her friends playing Dungeons and Dragons, because you can tell something is going on with the elf and the dragon. They're talking, but they sound like kids, and I love that opening. And each chapter opens up with them doing something different, like playing a side-scroller video game or playing with cars, but it looks like it's real at first. But the story is about her and her 3 friends, so all 4 of them, and they get mixed up because of her dad with these 4 felons that are trying to break into a bank. And to me, this is amazing because it is just so funny. The story has everything. You will laugh. You'll be in shock by some of the things that are happening in here. So it's a little bit of mature content, because of the language. And you may even cry a little bit. But just go in with a fair warning. It strives to tell a compelling tale about kids doing things no kids even should be thinking about doing, and the reason they're doing it is just so powerful. And it's awesome. I love this. This reminds me of just chilling out with my friends and playing video games, or getting together and just, I mean, what we used to do back in the day, we just shoot the shit. Before the age of internet and cell phones and YouTube, it's what we did, and that's why I added it to my list, because it reminded me of my childhood. Not that we ever broke into banks or anything that ridiculous, but it just, the wittiness of each of them being so quick with each other and going back and forth, and you had different types of friends. Anyway, check it out if you haven't read it. It's available everywhere. Silver Surfer Parable by Stan Lee and Moebius. There's not an X title on this list, and Silver Surfer is far from being my favorite superhero. But when I think about a standalone story that just speaks to me, and I think about a standalone story that everyone should read, this is definitely on the list. This is, of course it's on the list, it's here. This is written by Stan the Man Lee. And in 1988, he got together with Moebius, a French artist who is known for Blueberry, and he's done quite a number of work in the European comic market. And together, they made this standalone, out-of-continuity story. Because, yes, it is out of continuity, but it doesn't matter. It is the story of how Galactus gets cunning, and he declares to all humanity that he is God himself. So, people are split. People are like, oh, he really is God. And then he wants humanity to destroy itself, and then he gets to eat the earth. That's his trick. And then throughout these pages, you see this homeless guy walking around, and of course it's Silver Surfer. This homeless guy was walking around with a big giant surfboard. And it's just so good, and the story is so deeply rooted in philosophy, theology, religion, all of it in here. And the message is so potent. As a matter of fact, this has one of my favorite quotes of any of the comics I've ever read. For in truth, any man can make a difference. It is not given to us to know whether we shall succeed or not. In failure, there is no disgrace. There can be but one ultimate shame. The cowardice of not having tried. Every time. All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Here we go. To me, this is the best example of what this list is trying to achieve. To take a long existing character bogged down by decades of history and continuity and making it easily accessible to a brand new reader in just one sitting. And to get the understanding of who Superman is and what he is capable of doing and what he represents. There are people that I know that don't like Superman just because of the movie or what he stands for or little cameos that he makes in their Batman comics or their Justice League comics. And I don't think that really captures or encapsulates who he is. He is a symbol for a reason. I mean, yes, he's known as the Boy Scout. He's such a good guy. He's almost omnipotent. But this story, Morrison does so well. And you all know, if you've been following my channel, Frank Quitely's artwork had to grow on me after a decade almost. I was not a fan of his artwork. But his Superman here, I don't know. This is the story that sold me on it. There's some powerful moments in here. There's just powerful pages, just one page, just to summarize this amazing, beautiful comic book. It's so much. All of these are so much more than comics. I mean, they're called graphic novels, right? These to me are just as good as books. And there's some really good, heartbreaking moments in here too that feature Superman, that make you care about him. Anyone that loves Superman and has not read this, what are you waiting for? And people that want to know what Superman is or what he symbolizes, I think this is the best book because, yes, it's out of continuity and that doesn't really matter. What matters is what he stands for, and this is it. This is the book to read. Now, before we get to my final pick, I do have some honorable mentions because anytime I make these lists, it's difficult to see what the top 10 would be. So I Kill Giants, We 3, Next Wave, Black Bolt, God Country, Omega Man, Punk Rock Jesus, Vision, Boxers and Saints, just to name a few. Those were almost there. Actually, all those were there at one time, and then I had to move things around. But Habibi. Anyway, let's get to the final one. Mouse by Art Spiegelman. The most powerful graphic novel I could recommend is this heartbreaking tale. Art Spiegelman worked on it for years. Actually, the two stories that are in here were originally released throughout separate years, but it's all in one. It's available in many different formats. This is one that I definitely recommend for all schools to have. Because you're talking about the topic of the Holocaust, and you're talking about real people. Yes, they're drawn as mice, so that's one thing. All the characters in here are drawn as mice. All the Jewish people are drawn as mice. All the Nazis are cats. The pigs are like Polish people. I think Americans were dogs. But anyway, it tells the story of Art Spiegelman, so he himself. And he is writing down the chronicles of his father, Vladek Spiegelman, who is a Jewish survivor of Hitler's Europe. And it's this connection between father and son and coming to terms with his father's story, what happened to his mom. And it's just an insane feat to take the Holocaust and approaching it with cartoons of animals. There are no words. There's very little I can say about this. Then it is the most powerful graphic novel. You will be moved to tears. You will be moved to rage. And I think that's what defines a powerful book. And this is up there. To me, it's as important as every other story that you've had to read about the Holocaust in school. And I'm really surprised a lot of schools don't carry this. I remember my wife had it in her English classroom, but she's a comic reader, right? Not a lot of teachers have heard of this. And I know there was a big push a few years, but it seems like, I don't know, because it is a strong historical lesson and what it means to all of us and how we are all affected by the atrocities that happened there. So, yeah, that's how I'm ending this episode on a bummer, but I think it deserves to be on this list. Now, most of these books in every format is available through our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online source for collected editions up to 50% off retail price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on excellent packaging, so your stuff gets to you in excellent condition, and they have amazing customer service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And for all you Minties that are watching, if you're a first-time customer, don't forget to mention that Near Mint Condition sent you their way for a promotional credit on free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. CheapGraphicNovels.com, your source for the hottest books with deep discounts, customer service, and excellent shipping that will keep you coming back for more. And that was my top 10 suggested graphic novels that are standalone, all in one. You don't need to read anything else, but I think that's the trick, right? Like, I want these to hook you, or hook your friends so they can want to read more. And I would love to know what you've read, what you haven't read, what you look forward to reading from this list, and what your list is. Let me know all those comments down below. You all know I love talking back to all of you. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. And more importantly, please, every one of you, stay healthy, stay safe out there, and much love.